Listen up, people. That's right. It's time to listen to the sparks of bliss in your life. I'm your host and life coach, Caroline de Posada from Miami, Florida. And this podcast is an invitation to join me in upgrading our mindset, wellness, and relationships so that together we create a life that unlocks our bliss. Join me each week as we explore practical strategies, inspiring stories, and the moments of clarity, or as we like to call them, los momenticos, that make the world a little more magical. Consider this your weekly dose of wisdom in your pocket. Are you ready? Let's do this.
Hey, listeners. Welcome to episode number 19 of Blissin' Up. This is probably the most important episode I've shared so far. And the reason for that is because if you haven't experienced this already, I'm pretty sure at some point in your life you will. Because everyone goes through this at some time or another. There will come a point where you feel like your luck has run out, where it seems like the odds are stacked against you. And when your chances of success are so low that you're not sure you should keep trying. I want to share with you the story that really brought this theme to my heart, because that's what I do. I share stories. But while you're thinking or listening to that story, I want you to think about your life, the things that matter most to you. Your well-being, your relationships, your business or your career, anything that matters to you. And I want you to think about this question. If you were in trouble in one of these areas of your life, and someone told you that you only had 20% chance of success or survival or getting out of this problem, what would you do? So if you've been listening along to the podcast, then you've heard me talk about my sister. But if you're new here, I kind of want to bring you up to speed. My sister has been in the hospital for the last couple of weeks, not weeks, months, because she had an infected toe that resulted in half of her foot being amputated. Now, in the past, I never used to talk about my sister, and there's a reason for that. We are polar opposites, where I am a public figure and I kind of lead my life in a share all, tell all, join me, everybody's part of the family kind of way. My sister is quite the opposite. She's very private. She likes to, as she would say, fly under the radar. She doesn't like to be the center of attention. And because she has that personality, I've always wanted to honor her privacy. And out of respect, I really don't talk about her all that much. I don't share things about her or, highlight her, because I know that that's not what she would want. But recently we were in the hospital and having a heart-to-heart, and we were talking about, she was kind of sharing how she was questioning what God had in store for her, like what the plan was, like why was she put through this test and survived it, and what was she supposed to do with that? And I asked her, like, hey sis, if you knew, what would you want that plan to be? What would be your desire? And what her answer was surprised me. She said, I would want it to serve as an example for others. I would want it to help other people live better, feel better, and not have to go through what I go through. Like my sister's, what she had in her heart was that she wanted to inspire other people and she wanted to help other people. She wanted her life to mean something and to matter. And in that conversation, I said, hey, my whole purpose in this life is to help people live better, feel better, and not have to struggle alone. Because life does get hard for everybody, but I want to help people do life better, create healthier, happier, more meaningful lives, and struggle as little as possible. And I can share your story, sis. I can share your story to set an example, to inspire others to avoid going through what you've gone through. And she agreed. And because of that, she's become a part of my mission. And I'm so grateful to her for allowing her life to serve as an example, to allow her life to impact your life. And that's why I'm sharing this story today. So just kind of to give you a little bit of history, my sister has struggled her whole life with obesity and diabetes, and her path has kind of been a path of least resistance. She's not one who likes to be uncomfortable. She kind of, she's self-proclaimed lazy. She just doesn't want to go out of her way to change her circumstances. And quite frankly, I've always seen her to be a person who is pretty happy with her life the way that she is. She's not a complainer. She owns her reality. She is not, she doesn't show up as a victim of her circumstances. She's just kind of does life, and she's like a let live and let me live kind of person. And she's been getting by that way forever. And then this happened. And I do have to say, our family has always been worried about her because we kind of saw it coming. We saw her gaining more weight and losing mobility and just like getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And we were all afraid that something like this would happen, and we saw it coming. But from one day to the next, it was here. A lifetime of poor habits and, comfortable lifestyle and kind of path of least resistance led her to having this infected toe, which spiraled out of control. Like completely and totally spiraled out of control. And we've always been afraid that this was going to happen. But for whatever the reason, she was never afraid that this was going to happen. Like, I think my sister thought that she was just going to live her life on her terms until she didn't. I think in her mind, she was just going to die. Not that she was going to have to live in pain or live in suffering. And it's something I want you to think about. Like, if you are a person who has poor habits, if you are struggling or you are trying to take the path of least resistance and other people kind of see something you don't see, is it because in your mind you're going to live until you don't, as opposed to bearing the reality that you might actually live in pain or suffering? Like, you may actually not die, but have to suffer the consequences of your lifestyle in real time. And that's kind of where my sister was at. So she gets this infected toe. She's in the hospital, and she is in excruciating, debilitating, all-consuming pain. It was the saddest thing I've ever experienced in my life. There was no getting her out of it. There was no amount of medication or drugs that could sedate her enough to not feel the pain. It was constant and it was excruciating. It was horrible. And it kept getting worse and worse and worse. And we realized at some point that it was because she wasn't getting any blood flow to her toe, and her toe was dying. And that death was very, very painful. So it became pretty apparent at some point that she was going to have to require an amputation. And the way that it works in Florida is if you have a below the ankle amputation, so it's like if any part of your foot is amputated, so your toes or half your foot, that procedure is done by a podiatrist, and anything above the ankle is done by a vascular surgeon. So she'd been working with this vascular surgeon because we were trying to improve her blood flow and get her arteries functioning and get some blood to that toe to save the toe. But when we realized it was not going to happen, a podiatrist came in to basically look into cutting off the toe or whatever was needed that they were going to have to amputate. And the day that he came in, he shared with us some very devastating news. He said, listen, you are not getting good blood flow. You have, out of the 3 arteries that you have, 2 of them I can't hear at all, and 1 of them is very, very poor. And I'm not sure that this amputation is going to be successful. Meaning, first of all, we thought that they were only going to amputate 1 toe, but it turns out she had to amputate multiple. And because of the blood flow issue, he had to keep going up. So he'd have to amputate half of the foot instead of just the toes. And he didn't think she was going to get enough blood flow even to that area, which means that it wasn't going to have the ability to heal. And he said, if the surgery doesn't go well, like if the amputation doesn't go well and you don't heal, then we're going to have to do another surgery and we're going to have to go further up. And the next location for you is a below the knee amputation. So you're either going to lose half of your foot or maybe like from your knee down, your whole leg. So as he's giving this information to us, I'm there, my brother's there, and my sister's there. And I don't know how this came up, but somebody asked, like, what's the percentage? You know, if you had to give a percentage, if you had to give a chance of success, what do you think the chances of success are for that metatarsal amputation? And his response was about 20%. So there was an 80% chance that she would not heal from that amputation. Now you have to understand something. She was suffering. By this point, she had already been through 4 or 5 surgical procedures, meaning she had been put under anesthesia, taken under, operated on, dealt with all of the pain and process that comes not only from the procedure, but also from the anesthesia coming in and out. She was tired of being in pain. She was struggling. And when that man said, you have a 20% chance of success, I could see all of our hearts just sinking. And he said, having that information, what do you want to do? And the options were, you go for it and do that metatarsal amputation and let the chips fall where they may, or you skip that process and you improve your odds of success by cutting higher up. So you transfer this to the vascular surgeon does a below the knee amputation, and you increase your chances of success. And at that point, my sister was so defeated and medicated and suffering that she said, just cut the leg. Just take everything. And in that moment, my brother supported her and was like, yeah, I understand. She doesn't want to suffer anymore. Let's just go for the amputation, for the full amputation. But I knew something that I don't know if my sister knew or had the wherewithal of knowing, which is that once they amputate below the knee for a person in my sister's condition, a person who is morbidly obese and diabetic and has all sorts of complications, the chance of dying within the next 5 years shoots up to like something like 50%. It's crazy. So I knew that although cutting off my sister's leg might increase her chances of healing, it was going to decrease her chance of ever getting out of bed, ever moving again, and even living past 5 years. So when they asked my sister, they asked my brother, and then they asked me, and they said, Caro, what do you think we should do? I said, I think you fight for that 20%. You fight like hell for that 20%. And my sister started crying and she said, I don't want to go through any more pain. I don't want to have another surgery. I don't want this to fail. And I understood her, and ultimately I would have supported her. But I felt so strongly that you've got to fight for, even if it seems like the chances are low, you got to fight for a chance of success and for the most favorable outcome. So I shared my piece, I said, I'll support you and whatever. And she said, well, let's call mom and let's see what mom says. And we called my mom and we FaceTimed her and we explained to her the situation. And my mom, God bless her soul, who's 77 years old and is suffering because she's watching her daughter suffer. And I have to imagine it's the most horrible thing that you go through, is like to be an older person and seeing a younger person suffering like my sister was suffering has to have been so hard for her. It's her kid, at the end of the day, it's her kid. Even though she's a grown woman, but it's her kid. But my mom in that moment had this grace and this strength and this knowing. And she looked at my sister on FaceTime and she said, Kathy, if it was me, I would fight for that 20%. Exactly what I said. She said, you got to fight for it. You got to fight to save your foot. Because if it works, if it heals, you have a chance to walk again. You have a chance to have a normal life. And that is something worth fighting for. So at that point, I held on to that strength of my mom, who is such a hero. I love her so much. I held on to that strength and I went for it. And I said, Kathy, this is between you and God. You have got to give God a chance at giving you a miracle. You can't take away that opportunity for a miracle. Even if it means you're going to suffer more and you're going to have multiple surgeries and you're going to go through more pain. We don't know what the result is going to be, but it's worth it. 20% is not nothing. It's 20%. Let's give God the opportunity to shine and give us a miracle in that 20%. And she said, okay, I'm going to go for it. Today, my sister has, it's been about a month since the operation. She called me this morning with this incredible news that she has lost 69 pounds, that she, for the first time, has been able to wheel herself in her wheelchair all across the atrium, which is something that she could not do. She is now being transferred from the bed to the wheelchair without a machine, which she could not do. And she said, Caro, I am so motivated. I know I am going to walk again. I know that I'm going to get out of this bed. I know that I'm going to be okay. And she is 75 to 80% healed. She's not completely healed. We still have a little ways to go. But slowly but surely, she is healing and going in the right direction. And to us, it's nothing short of a miracle. Now, this has made me think a lot about when we feel like our odds are low and how desperate we want to avoid failure. We want to avoid pain. We want to like cut to the chase and just be done with it already. And I thought about like, what if your marriage is at a point where it looks like you have an 80% chance of getting a divorce because things are just not looking good? What if financially you're at a point where it looks like there's an 80% chance you are, going to go bankrupt, or you're not going to be able to pay your bills this month because you are so low and you're like chasing a dream or chasing a business, or you're an entrepreneur, or just, you're just trying to do what you love, and like your chances are so low of success at that point. What if it's your health? You get a diagnosis and they tell you like there's 20% chance that you're going to get cured and there's an 80% chance that you're not. What do you do in that moment? Do you stop trying? Do you give up? Do you say just like skip the hard part and just do whatever you got to do? And maybe your answer will be, yeah, I stop. And that might be okay for you. But what if you fought for that 20%? What if you gave yourself the opportunity to go through the pain, risk the failure, go through the hardness to see what's on the other side? Before this happened with my sister just did not ever have any interest in changing her life around. Like she's a young woman. She's in her early 50s, and she was already walking with a cane and for long walks or whatever, using a scooter. And her mobility had been drastically limited. And I said to her, when she called me and told me about wheeling herself around the atrium and about how she was going to walk again and how determined she was, because she's just doing it. She's going for it. She's doing her exercises. She's being obedient. She's taking her vitamins. She's showing up. She's doing everything the physical therapist asks of her. She is all in. She didn't have that drive before. And so I asked her the other day, and I'm like, where did this motivation come from? Why didn't you have this before? And she said, well, because I don't want to be in this bed forever. I don't want to be bedridden for the rest of my life. Like I want an opportunity to walk again. And I said, no, I understand that, but you were already almost bedridden before. You were already losing your mobility. Why didn't this matter to you before? And her response was, because before I could compensate. I could get to the scooter. I could use the cane. I could take the path of least resistance, but compensate. And I wasn't actually bound to the bed. I had my independence. I could drive. I could get places. I could, get up and do, go to the kitchen or go to the bathroom, like do those kinds of things. And now I realize that I'm no longer in a position where I can compensate. I can't. Now I have to give 100% of my effort to get out of this bed. So it took my sister having 80% chance of failure and only a 20% chance of success to give 100% of her effort. Maybe in your marriage, it'll take having 80% chance of divorce to give 100% of your effort and love to your spouse. Maybe it'll take 80% chance of losing your job or losing your financial stability to give 100% of what you've got to your business, your career, your employment, whatever it is. Maybe you need such little chances of success to give everything you have to turn it around, to shift the momentum. And of course, I stand by this, and I've always said this: you have no control over the outcome. You only have control over what you do. So one of my governing principles is do the work, surrender the outcome. It's a principle I heard from someone long ago, and I have kept with me close to my heart, and I abide by that principle. I live by that principle. You do the work and you surrender the outcome. And sometimes we're so focused on our outcome that we're not willing to do the work because we don't want to surrender the outcome. We want to control the outcome. And in my sister's case, at the very beginning, she wanted to control not going into surgery again. She wanted to control not going through any more pain. So she was like, I'm going to cut the chase. I'm going to just get the bigger surgery so that I can avoid having to surrender the outcome of failure with this surgery. And we had to show her that she was going to have to surrender the outcome anyway. Because guess what? That other surgery didn't guarantee success. It raised her odds, but it didn't guarantee success. And in life, nothing is guaranteed. You might be in the best position of your life right now, and your success is not guaranteed. Something can happen. There could be a wrench in the plans. There could be a change of direction. There could be a tragedy. There could be anything. We don't have a crystal ball, and we aren't guaranteed anything in this life. So control is nothing more than an illusion that we carry just, to get by. But in reality, we don't have it. My father used to always talk about what he called the X factor. He used to say, in life, there's, you do what you got to do. You follow these principles. You you stack the odds in your favor. And then there's the X factor. And no one knows what's going to happen with the X factor. And sometimes the X factor works out in your favor, and sometimes it feels like the X factor does not work out in your favor. Well, I've done a lot of thinking about the X factor, and what I've realized is that for him, what the X factor is what the universe may be for you, or God may be for you, or a higher power may be for you. The X factor is the unknown, the uncertainty of this life. And where I differ from my father is I used to agree with him in that the X factor could either be for you or against you. And now I believe that the X factor just is. It just is. And that is always for you if you choose it to be so. because you can choose to look for the lessons. You can choose to grow. You can choose to allow the X factor that seems to have hit you in the face to be the thing that pivots your life, that gives you purpose, that gives you meaning, that changes the direction of your life. And sometimes you wish things were different and you wish things hadn't gone that way. But as you grow, and if you can survive it, and if you can get to the other side, you'll realize that everything is already okay. That even though you may wish something were different, you'll never actually want it to be different, because what happened on the other side would have never happened if things were different. So today, I want to leave you with this. Why wait until you're at 20%? Until the tank is empty? Why wait? Why not instead think to yourself, I am going to stop compensating, give 100% of my effort, do the work, surrender the outcome, and trust that the X factor is life being rigged in my favor, so that I don't have to wait until I've gotten so low in my life to shift things around. I can start shifting right now. Think about all of the areas of your life in which maybe it's not 20%, but it's not aligned. It's not going in the right path, and you know it. What are you going to do about it? And if today my sister can serve as inspiration to you, then you've given some meaning to what she's gone through. And you've given some meaning to what I've gone through. And together we are spreading the good. We are making the project big, like my dear friend Dr. Sanchez says. And we are working as a collective to support each other, to help each other, and to put each other on an aligned path towards our definition of success, towards our highest version of ourselves, towards our dream life. I hope that this serves you. I hope that, this will inspire you to get on path and to start, shifting the momentum in your life. And thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for everyone who has asked me about my sister and sent prayers for my sister and well wishes for my sister. She has received all of your love. She has received all of your support. It has been so meaningful to her. And I gotta tell you, she is up and coming, man. She is getting to the other side. And I'm so proud of her for fighting for her 20%. I'm so proud that she went for it, that she took the risk, that she endured the pain, that she chose for the first time in her life to not take the path of least resistance, to do something different and change her story. And she's right now in the process of that incredible transformation. And I cannot wait to see what life has in store for her. I hope you have a sacred Sunday and that this episode has served you and given you something to reflect upon, and that you will share it with someone you know needs to hear it. Share it with someone that maybe feels like their odds are stacked against them, like their chances of success are so low, or like their luck has run out. Maybe this is exactly what they need to hear. So please share, like, subscribe, rate the podcast, and let's be part of the collective spreading good in this world. Happy Sunday, everybody. That's it for today's episode. Thanks so much for being here. I am deeply, deeply grateful for this time to connect. If you're loving this podcast, I'd love if you could support me by subscribing, rating, and/or leaving a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Those reviews help us so much. And if you know of someone who could really use a voice like mine in their head, please share this with them and let them know how much you care about their bliss. Now, if you are feeling called to dig deeper and really work on elevating your mindset, wellness, and your relationships to create a healthier, happier, and more meaningful life, then I invite you to schedule a 60-minute complimentary consultation with me. Let's have a meaningful conversation and see if working together is in our future. You can find the link to the calendar of consults right there in my show notes, but you can also connect with me on my website, carolinedeposada.com, or just send me a DM on Instagram @CarolineDePosada. Like my friend always says, the project is big and you're a part of it. So thanks for being here.